everyone. And yeah, sorry for the delay. It seems like we're missing one of the panelists, but I'm sure we'll be fine with this amount of people. As Stan already said, my name is Elena. I'm a founder at Achievers Hub. And one of the things that Achievers Hub do is introducing talented game developers to publishers and investors from all around the world. And today we will speak about the particular part of this world, Asia in general and China in particular. And you will get to know soon why we decided to divide it into two different parts. But before we start, Shirley already asked you a few questions, but I'd like to repeat them again and see how many people we have here who have already published or like tried to publish a game in Asia. Okay, cool. And how many of you are interested in publishing your game in Asia soon? Awesome. Cool. So I hope it will be useful for you. And for those who are still not sure about the publishing their games in Asia, I have some numbers. In 2018, Chinese gamers spent 32 billion USD on mobile and PC games, and gamers in Southeast Asia spent 4.4 billion USD, and this combined is responsible for half of mobile and PC game market, like combined of the world. So the region is quite indeed very interesting, but at the same time it might be very confusing and like alien to Western developers. So let's get to know a little bit more about it. And now it's time to introduce our amazing guests, or I would better give them an opportunity to introduce themselves, tell a few words about yourself, your current position, and your current company, what you do there.
Hi, my name is Taewon Yoon. I'm the Chief Business Officer at Super Evil Megacorp, working on a cross-platform core game right now called Project Spellfire. I'm here to looking into expanding our production capacity by working with the Eastern European talent. I'm Korean. And my name is Taewon, and I used to live in China, so I know everything.
About Asia,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I studied as a local Korean company back in the days, and then worked in EA, run EA's online division for Asia. Before EA decided that there is no future in online game, it shut down EA.com. Back in year 2000. Since that, I fuck EA and move on to Blizzard, launched World of Warcraft in Asia. So I came up with the whole strategy on how we should do online games in APAC, and I pretended that I'm the expert in China because at the time no one knew about China. It's like that. Even Chinese people didn't know about how games work in China. So, after a while, I left Blizzard, thinking that, hey, I learned everything I need to know. I'm gonna start my own thing. So I started a studio called Red 5 Studios in Irvine. Got some funding and have nothing to show for that. Really interesting $50 million MBA experience. So I got back to Blizzard. Hey, startup is not fun. Actually, can I come back? And they said me, okay, you can come back, but you go to China. So I spent 5 years in China as a part of Blizzard operation. Got bored, jumped over to wargaming, studied there Asian business as the MD. So I sort of built the Asian operation there. So it was interesting experience learning more about South Asia. And then I kind of realized that I'm not playing PC games any further. So I joined this For Evil, which was doing the mobile game at the time. So I'm still there, having a lot of fun. And for me, it is actually really interesting is that I've been around, Asia and US in most of my career. and then for me, I'm starting the journey to learning more about Europe now. So I'm like, ask me any questions about Asia, and then tell me about you guys about Europe. Thank you.
Thank
Let's go
you.
home.
Yeah. Oh, please pass it through.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Xianzhe. I'm from WhisperGames. We are a publisher based in China. We focus on PC and console games. And normally, we only do premium games. So if you are developing or have plans for launching a premium game on PC and consoles in China or in Asia, you can talk with me. I can see how can I help you with that. And WhisperGames is established 4 years ago, and till now we already helped around 100 games to launch their games in Asia. And some of them are quite successful, and also maybe some of them are not quite successful. I'm happy to share all my experience here to you and answer your questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Jinghua from Yoozoo Games, and well, this is I would like to tell a little bit about our company. That its headquarters is in Shanghai, and we started in 2009 as a web browser-based game developer. And unlike WhisperGames, we only do free-to-play. And now we do both web browser-based and mobile games. We are a developer and also a publisher. And we got listed in the stock market in 2014. Now we have like more than 1,500 people around the world. And me as the corporate development in Europe, that I personally look for games to publish not just in China, but also in Asia or even worldwide, because we have the capability, and we have local publishing offices in Seoul, in Tokyo, Singapore, as well as in Germany. And I'm personally based in Berlin. And while this is my first time actually in Kiev, and I'm very happy to meet. Thank you. to see the city and to see how's the game industry growing here, and to meet local developers and partners. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Randy Barenscott. I work for a company called AppicPlay, and we are a mobile publisher in China, focused in the casual game space. I've been over in China for 4 years now, based in Beijing. It's a team of about 60 people. And a great portion of that company came from another company called Zplay. And that other company did a very similar thing. But while we were at that other company, we had one hit game that did about 300 million downloads. So that's our sort of heritage of experience. AppicPlay's been around for 4 years, but we've only had our doors open to publishing Western games for about the last 18 months, which has coincided just horribly with the content freeze that's on in China. So we've had a very slow start, but we're very committed to the market. For now, we also monetize other people's games and apps, and we have about 30 million DAU on our ad tech right now.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Shirley Lin. I came from San Francisco Bay Area, so Silicon Valley. This is my second time in Kyiv in 9 days. In the past few years, my space is very much in mobile gaming. So I have worked for Italian company, French company, China company. So I have a lot of basically do a lot of international BD and building the operations across 3 continents, China, Europe, and US. So right now, I just started my company. It's called RunAppRun. You guys know the film, Forrest Gump. Yes. Yeah. And then there is an iconic film, Run Lola Run. I think it's a German company. So I took from that and got my hint. Anyway, so right now, I'm doing a lot of consulting on user growth, monetization, and investment strategy kind of things. My own background, I'm from Taewon. And my parents were from China, so that's why I'm fluent in Mandarin. And I went to US and I switched from history to computer science. I got my degree in computer science, worked in NASA in Houston. For a few years, I wrote thousands of lines of code. And somehow I switched to game and switched to all this kind of business development. I don't even have a business degree. So I know many of you also do that. So we're going to be sharing a lot of the experiences in China, in Southeast Asia, because I used to go to China a lot and know many, many companies as well. So kind of in the trench of experience, hang out with those people there for a long time. So I'll be happy to share any of my experiences with
Cool.
you.
Thank you, Shirley. Very happy to have you all here. And my first question is very basic. From your experience, how different are Asian gamers from Western gamers, and how different are Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Southeast Asian gamers from each other? Who wants to start?
They're all different for sure. And they're
In
all the
which
same.
way? Okay.
But they're all the same and they're all the different. What I mean by that is, so like the same as movie, like there are global movie that is successful everywhere. Some movies only work in certain countries and region. Especially it is a like culturally very embedded in one region. Game works the same way. If it is like using a lot of like cultural element in the gaming, like local culture, it actually having quite a lot of difficult time to going out unless the culture is widely known. And then the good example would be the World of Warcraft has been this fantasy-based game that has been globally like successful, except Japan. And World of Tank, like here, it is a like one of the biggest game ever, because like the tank culture is embedded in their like cultural history, and that you guys grew up seeing that a lot. In Asia, we heard about, like played it when I was 8. When you become 10, that you get it away. So World of Tank has been quite like niche market. So I think that it is a rather than like players are different, they are more like trained different. Because like who comes into the first in the market, the first game that are launched like defines how players accept other things that comes after, as much as players are different themselves. Good example of that would be like the first like MMOs in Asia developed as a mouse control only games, and then everyone thought that is the only way Asian gamers are different from West, where mouse and keyboard are used. But now, like it has become globally same as everyone uses like keyboard and mouse for control. So, well, to sum it up, because I think I realize I've been rambling too much, but key thing is like there's no such a thing as Chinese, like uniqueness of Chinese. Like everything is quite nuanced. So we are as confused about Chinese or Korean as much as you guys are confused about Chinese and Korean. So.
Okay. Yeah, I think there is an objection.
Overruled.
Sorry. We have agreed that we're going to disagree, okay? I totally disagree. Chinese players have very different habit of playing, especially mobile game. I can't speak for PC or console game. Chinese players look for, well, you guys play games. You guys are all hardcore playing games. You guys enjoy the process of playing games. Chinese players are quite different. They enjoy satisfaction of getting ahead of everybody. Okay, they enjoy the status. They want to go that fast, and they are not, they don't mind buying some virtual currency, get to that status.
This is brilliant. I'm sorry, this is brilliant.
So therefore,
I disagree.
Okay, let me finish, okay? I have worked with many Chinese developers, and they are based in China, and they showed me the data, Okay, so when you go to China, it's not just a localization, you know, texture, you change to that. It's most important, just like if Chinese game come to it, cultural adaptation. Okay, because of their habit of playing, you need your gameplay have to change somewhat to let them satisfy in the level up or level down. Let them get that satisfaction. So free to play actually has a lot of opportunities there. Of course, you know, everybody will tell you Tencent is the biggest, you know, market dominator. But that kind of changes in the gameplay is unavoidable. So what boils down to is that when you find a partner to go publishing in China, you want your partner to understand what you need to work with a publisher, what need to be changed in the gameplay. It's not just the textual changes. Yeah. Okay, that's.
I disagree. One point. There is actually,
if it's a small point, you can say it, but if it's something long,
it is actually a different point, because actually it is really important. When you work with Chinese partner, you will hear that. They will ask you to change this and change that. But the problem here is that Chinese developers do better job in developing games that work for Chinese. If you try to mimic what Chinese people do, you cannot win that war. So.
we are talking about completely different things, you know.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to add something related to PC and console games. So from our experience, that many Western players might call a Chinese community or Chinese players poisonous, because there are many cases that Chinese players might do like review bomb on Steam or on other platforms, so that the whole game sales in globally will get down because of Chinese review bombs. But right now I want to tell you that this is not true. Actually not true for all cases. For many cases, if you get the right to approach to Chinese players to show your goodwill or you're willing to do the right thing, Chinese players will simply like thank you and give you more than you can imagine on the sales and on the feedback, on reviews, and so on. For example, one of our game called Conan Exiles, which is a online RPG. Before they did a really bad thing that they blocked their server, made a ping block so that Chinese players who experience high ping cannot play on their server, which results in a review bump on the global sales, went down sharply. After we did a series of attempts to show their goodwill and also did the right thing to improve the server performance, and Chinese review rate just generating very stable and high for more than 2 years now. So the sales in China also increased sharply. Yeah, I just want to add this.
Yep,
okay.
That's a good addition. Yeah, I remember. Shirley, please take my.
Yeah. So I remember the really quick data, 2017, Steam's 25% revenue was from China.
Yep. Do you have anything to add, or we just?
Sure. I mean, I agree with Shirley about the things that people play for, and so when we localize a game, we very much respect those differences in terms of what people will pay IAP for. And it extends into other things like ad tolerance and stuff like that. So the market is really distinct. The other thing I was going to add is China is a very mobile-first culture. So, you know, as of 2018, 1/4 of all smartphones in the world were in China. So it's a big market for mobile, whereas, of course, console is largely absent. So if you've got a mobile game, you somehow need to really, you know, target China as the massive opportunity that it is. You'll need help getting to Android, but otherwise, you really need to look at China.
And well, I would like to add some few last points about. I think the Asian gamers, when we talk about Asian gamers, maybe from Europe, when we see them, they seem like a bunch of people, but actually they are not. They are very different from each other. And
That's a good point.
well, for example, I would say something specifically about mobile mid-core to hardcore games. That because the behaviors of the users are also very different depending on the genres and the platforms. And for example, for hyper-casual games, maybe that you don't have to localize that much, and you can launch it all over the world, like on the same day. But for mid-core to hardcore games, that you need to think thoroughly, and you need to review, for example, the art style and the marketing strategy and the gameplay for all the different territories in Asia. And usually for us publishers, we don't launch them all together. We maybe, for example, the most regular process, we start from mainland China, and then maybe we go into traditional Chinese territories, and then we may or may not go to South Korea or Japan or Southeast Asia, especially in Southeast Asia, that there are so many languages, and the localization workload is quite huge. But I guess maybe you also heard about the ROIs and the pay rate and the conversion rates there. So this is also the risk that we need to evaluate. So for example, if you're looking for a publishing partner, that if they just publish your game in one of those territories, it's not a problem at all. Yes, because those gamers are very, very different.
Yeah, okay. I also, when I was preparing for this panel, I found a study conducted by Nico Partners. They studied Chinese and Southeast Asian gamers and compared them to the similar study in the US and some other Western countries. And they found out that there are 4 things critical for Chinese and Southeast Asian gamers in the games. These are completion, competition, challenge, and community. What do you think about this? Do you agree on this?
I think that Nico is actually doing a quite good job in the report.
Thank you.
Yeah, what I was trying to say is that I've been read through the multiple report on Asian market, Asian player tendency and whatnot. Among the market report I saw, I like Nico ones the most because they actually doing a quite good job compared with other reports from other companies. Sometimes, a lot of times, I feel some of the report they feel they are based on fantasy rather than reality. But Yoozoo seems to be doing a really good job. Not Yoozoo, sorry, Nico.
Nico, yep. I have a couple of screenshots actually from these reports, but it's mainly about esports. So I wanted to talk to you about esports. What is the situation? I know that Chinese market is the biggest market for esports in the world, and Southeast Asian is the fastest growing one, according to this new surveys. Who of you have worked with this part? I know you are into esports, but please take the microphone first. No, I will not let you unless you take the microphone.
Oh. The point. Sorry. So I said, Nico's report are usually quite good, except esports. Do not look at any esport report and try to understand esports, because when I see this report, the first thing I'm questioning is that based on what? What do you mean by esports revenue? If you ask them, none of the market research companies can be able to answer. Usually what they say is that this is the revenue of the game itself. And I completely, usually disagree with the...
with everything?
Right. So how players behave and not, yes, look at that, it is a pretty good representation. How esports or like revenue are represented is nothing to do with reality. It tells you what is popular in Asia. You can tell that, but not
Yep.
the like market size or stuff like that.
Yeah, it was more about comparison of Asian markets, Eastern and like Western markets. Yeah. Yep.
I think in China, esport has a very mature market, and just last week, a giant company called Bilibili purchased the exclusive right to broadcast LOL World Finals with last week. No. It is Bilibili who spent more than $100 million for the exclusive rights to broadcast the LOL World Champions.
Cool.
It is a streaming platform, but it's also a mobile publisher who is also looking into the esport business. But like I said, this is only one aspect of how esports is functioning quite well in China right now. The money is still going there, and a lot of streaming platforms join the competition. They establish their own clubs, and the professional players who earn a very large money every year, and they have their own like professional league who is doing every week. So it is quite major and quite independent, I think, from the Western esport market. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Yes, my client, whom I brought to Kyiv 9 days ago, they just closed an acquisition about a month ago, and this was an esport company, $248 million USD. So esport is very, very mature. And in China, the streamers, actually, the whole ecosystem figure out how to monetize on streamer before even US. And I have friends in Silicon Valley, big VC, invested in some of this esports, Twitch-based esport. They don't know how to monetize yet. But China market is so mature, they know how to monetize it. I think of at least 2 years ahead.
Yep.
I think many of the US streamers don't know how to monetize. So it's extremely profitable, and big conglomerate in China are acquiring these kind of companies left and right. It's a very, very booming market.
Okay. So the next question is for those of you who have ever helped Western game developers bring their games to Asia, that the games that were already out in Western world. Can you tell us a bit about how it went? What did they have to change in these games in order to fit the market?
Okay, I first. Okay, so there are several things you need to pay attention, and some things that you must not do in China. For example, the most serious thing is like make political jokes. With political leaders in China. This is one thing that you would definitely want to avoid. Yeah, and the other thing is it's like the Second World War. It's very sensitive topic in China. You want to avoid anything related to the Japanese army here. And the third part should be like sexual violent content, you should avoid that. And for multiplayer, you need to ensure that server performance must be good for Chinese players. And you also need to consider the time difference when Chinese players join the server while the Western players are just sleep at home. Yeah, so I can think about these things you need to think about before you go to China. Yeah.
Yep. Sure, do it.
I'll add to that. So in terms of content, sensitivity to blood, if there's a lot of blood in the game, you have to change the color and make it seem like goo or ooze. No anarchy in the streets. You can't have location-based games or chat elements that allow large groups to communicate together. these things don't translate well into the China market. So those are some of the challenges.
Okay.
Well, I agree with Randy that it's very important to have kind of social friend system or guild system in the game to, even for casual games, to increase the retention, the long-time retention that players can engage it for like more than 30 days, 60 days, that they can share the game or build their own teams with their friends, and they can have some kind of PvP modes. Even when you don't have a large enough user base, you can bring in some bots, but please like enhance the algorithm of the bots. Like don't let people easily find out, oh, I'm playing with another computer. That I think the social system is very important. And another thing is, well, as for developers, is the content that I think Asian gamers consume the content in a very fast speed. So if your game is not ready yet, for example, just have 1 or 2 weeks of gameplay, that if they, purchase some items in game that they can reach the top in just maybe 3-5 days, that is absolutely not enough. I guess at least I hope a developer can get the game ready for at least 1 month of gameplay. And until they reach the top of level, they still have something to do. For example, like arenas or like weekly live ops events or like tournaments to keep them stay in the game, because the CPIs are so expensive these days. You don't want to churn them. You don't want them to go. So, yes.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Please take care of the content consumption rates.
Yeah, you also want to understand in China, the Android market is extremely fragmented because obviously Google was banned. I remember in 2013-14, there are at least 750 Android stores, channels. That's just at least. Right now, it's a probably lower number than that. So if you have a game on iOS, I would suggest you do iOS because it's subjected to less scrutiny. Android games totally being scrutinized. So I would always advise you guys go iOS first. Android, you definitely want to work with partner. But there's a phenomenon in China with the Android market because there are all these players. You find the big ones. And right now they tax a lot. At the peak in 2013-14, you can get probably 4.837. You get more proportion. But right now, because the market is squeezed, you get probably 9-1 or 2-8 kind of split. So be aware of that. And also the phenomenon in China is that if your game is good, you are guaranteed to be copycatted. Okay?
Yeah.
But the big players, the phenomenon is that if you have a game that actually do fairly well, and trust me, they all watch your numbers on Google Play. They can do VPN and watch your games. If it's a game that they think it's good, the kind of practice, let's just call it, the big platform will say, I like your games. Okay, we'll take you. They will yank out. It's sort of like a mafia. They will yank out all your copycats. But with this platform, you don't have the control of the advertisement. They control the advertisement. So you just be happy because the sheer volume of players is enough to get you some profit, even if you're on the short end of the stick receiving 1% or 2%. But they control all the advertisement. So be aware of that, and then don't think it's something harsh. You need to work through those and navigate those landmines.
You wanted to ask?
Yeah,
something?
I'll just explain what I do. Instead of trying, because we build our game and then launch in China. I used to localize and then culturalize the World of Warcraft into Chinese market and whatnot. But it is actually quite cumbersome to try to create a different build for different countries. So the strategy we are doing right now is that we just don't do that's gonna be censored in China. So that makes it easy for our partner in China to publish and then going into the censorship. And then someone mentioned this already, but as we are developing a real-time action game, and it has been like network operations in China has been the like biggest nightmare. Like and it got much better over the years, but still, like you will see a lot of like different issues in China that you've never seen anywhere outside of China. So if you are running a like real-time game, and then if you go to China, and then if your sub-engineer tells you that like we are completely covered, we are fine, don't believe him. You gotta test it in China because it's different. Okay.
Yep. Randy, you wanted to add something? Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify one thing that Shirley said. The content requirements for China are the same whether it's Android or iOS. The only thing that's different is the enforcement on iOS isn't the same. The Chinese government has complete control over all the Android channels, so they can enforce compliance quite easily. But Apple is more taking the position of self-regulation. So they put a spot for you to put your ISBN number, but they don't do anything, if you don't meet the requirements or you don't have an ISBN. So just wanted to make that point of clarification.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think that the situation with this government and regulation gonna change in the near future?
It changes
Already.
all the time.
Yeah, I mean to the better.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think that I've never seen it getting better.
Very optimistic.
Yes.
Okay. Actually, like time flies very quickly. So, and I want to give an opportunity to our amazing audience to ask questions. So, Stan, can you please take one microphone? And yeah, we have time for a couple questions.
We can take 10 minutes from our next speaker. He is okay with it. So I just ask because we have this technical issues. Oh. So if you would like to.
Okay, yeah. Let's just go move to the audience questions.
Okay.
Hi there. First of all, I wanted to say that I had so much pleasure listening to all of you. Like, really, it's just very interesting. I wanted just to say that I'm a game designer, and so actually I work on the plot of the game. And recently we had a situation when we have kind of an event where the main character is, like, he's leaving Miami and going to China. And we write a plot about that. So my question is kind of maybe unusual, but the thing is, in many games, I see Chinese, Japanese, Korean characters, right? But they are written from kind of this like American or European perspective. And I feel that sometimes, well, I have Chinese friends, and they say very often that how this like Americans or like Europeans perceive this culture is a, not to be disrespectful, bullshit. So okay. My Fair question enough. Is how do you perceive, what are the things, or maybe talking about the plot, not only like this mechanics, but the plot. What should European or American game developer do to make the game appealing to like Japanese, Korean, Chinese, if it's possible to speak about that in general, a player?
You mean from narrative point of view? Or
yep, I think talking about narration, because I also think it's important how, like, for example, I think when I see, for example, Ukrainian or Russian in American movies from 80s, I feel, oh God, they think that we have bears like walking down the streets, you know, and that may be so sad because that's not true. I think people of this culture should feel the same at some point.
Okay. Do you have something to?
I'll maybe start, and people can layer on. So, I mean, to me, the best defense in that kind of scenario is you should be partnering with a Chinese team to get that content right. So, you're not going to do any better than that. If just like the problem that you mentioned of the 80s, those are people making big assumptions about your local culture and getting it all wrong. So unless you're getting information from the source, you're always going to have problems. So I would say, you know, you don't have to strike a formal business relationship to get input from people who work in China. They'll give it to you for free. That doesn't mean that there isn't a business case for you to approach a Chinese company about doing better in China and cooperate at the stage where you're designing the game to get that character representation proper. So that would be my suggestion, is partner either informally or formally. And if you're really valuing China as a market, you know, I would suggest you strike a formal relationship with a Chinese publisher. Chances are you'll do much, much better.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I like to disagree, but
Not
this time so let me do two things. One, I give you a like example of who tried what you are trying to do. It's been quite a while ago, so I can really like say it. Meaning, so there is a company called Sony Online Entertainment, right?
Yeah,
They used to have a quite like the most popular MMORPG in the West. It's called the EverQuest. So back in the day, they wanted to like launch their game in Asia. So like they worked with NCSoft in Korea to go into Korea, and then like NCSoft guys that told them, so well, like this is the problem, there is a problem, like, and then like you should fix it that way. Like so, you're like, we are Sony, like what do you know? We know games. And then EverQuest 1 completely bombed in Korea. Like so, 4 years later, they came up with this EverQuest 2, which was supposed to be the like biggest, you know, like MMORPG ever. So they worked with NCSoft again to come into like Korea, and then like this time around they were, hey, what do we need to do to make it work in Korea? And then one of the feedbacks like NCSoft guys gave them was that, hey, like the artwork of your characters, you know, they are too like Americanized. You know, like that doesn't actually work. We like, you know, Asian style artwork on characters. So you maybe try that. So Sony guys heard it like, okay, let's make it Asian. And then several months later, they came back to Korea, and then they say, hey, like now we completely Asianized for you. And then everyone in Asia say, fuck, what the fuck is that? It got worse. So Sony they did an Asian character that they think is Asian by American artist. So, and then the end result was that I saw the art, I was like, that is so hideous. So it was, no one is happy. So that's where what he was saying is that if you want to do a Chinese or like Asian cultural stuff, have local people to write that. You cannot do that.
Hire them.
So what I do, because of that, my policy, or like when I do work on a game and content, I don't try to like touch upon too deeply into like local culture, because I know that I cannot do that. I know I cannot make Ukrainian culture-based product, and then like it's not gonna look authentic. So instead of that, that's why I love working in fantasy or science, like having a Chinese element in the game. It totally works. That's what I did with World of Warcraft. If you look at some of the art in World of Warcraft, we never talk about China, but there are some stuff that like looks like Chinese, and then my experience is that people like appreciate that. So there's a really fine line between pandering and giving respect, and I try not to pander. But again, what I do is like quite a little bit different from because like what I do is hardcore and like online games. So like casual side, I think they know much better than I do.
Okay. I hope it answers your question. Yeah, we have more questions.
3 more questions.
Over there, yeah.
Can I start here?
Okay.
Hello. How to solve issues with a firewall?
Sorry?
I mean with online connectivity.
Firewall.
Firewall. I know that Chinese have a huge firewall which brings
Great firewall.
connection issues with the Google services.
Oh,
for
firewall.
example.
Okay.
Yeah, firewall. Yeah. And do you have some best practices to kind of solve these questions?
Like this requires like probably multiple days of answer. So one thing is this is a situation you cannot solve on your own. Like you gotta work with your partner in China, and then that is actually like really like highly regulated field, and with this stuff, some like I cannot publicly talk about, and that there is a reason why we did it, and then it means that you talk to your Chinese partner. It's like,
Yeah. Anybody else want to add? Yeah. Yeah.
Chinese partner, it is required the content be on the server in China. Period. Okay? Your partner will want you to move your code. So you have to be careful how to protect your source code and so on and so forth. It is required. You must use the Chinese server. Whether you do game or e-commerce or movie or whatever.
Yeah.
What is it?
Yeah. Okay. That's fine. One more. Yeah. Of course.
Okay, just a few sentences that I guess the most efficient way is you set up the servers in mainland China, right? Just like
Yeah.
Shirley said, that, well, if your team, I mean, operates, for example, from Europe, that you can work with data centers and service providers from China. And as I know, for example, like Alibaba Cloud, they have their cloud service, and they set up data centers in mainland China and also Hong Kong and Singapore, perhaps. And well, because they have a very good relationship with the governments, that I guess they can reduce the latency pretty significantly, yes. And so find your right partner, maybe not a publisher, but for data service providers.
Okay. We have one last question.
Oh, one last question. Hello. Thank you so much for this very cool speech as for me, because I'm not a gaming company, but I have another company like to provide some advertising animations video also for the games. But today I have a partner in some mobile game, in like a casino. So I want to ask you about some maybe for the favor. What kind of steps, for example, he want to do to promote and to publish the casino game for the Asian market? Thank you.
Wow, that's an interesting question.
I guess you can exclude mainland China because it's illegal.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the other Asian territories.
Philippines is one country that like casino is very popular, but they do, because of that, they make their own like casino games. Some of the countries like the thing is that in general, most of the Asia, like gambling are largely like banned, so it's not that easy to do like full-fledged casino games. But you will be able to see like a bunch of the like casual casino games. So, but it's not as popular as like US. Like if you look at the US market, like you see casino games at the top grossing all the time. If you look at the like Chinese market, then you don't see any of them. And there's a reason why. Like first of all, it's banned, and then they put the casino inside a game, instead of like selling it as casino. So like loot box came from Asia for a reason, because everyone loves to do gambling a little bit, but as they cannot do it officially, they gamified it.
Yeah,
So
kind of.
it's gonna be hard for you to
Yeah.
compete with that.
Okay, I actually lied to you. Now we have the last question. Darina, please.
Hi, everybody. Most of you know me, right? Yeah. I would like to hear kind of like expertise from two of people. It's from Randy and Jinghua, because the question will be about mobile games. Sorry, Xianzhe. Yeah, so I disagree in one point with Shirley. She mentioned if you want to get into Chinese mobile market, you can start with iOS without any ISBN license and the stuff, and then you can try to find a partner for Android channels. So if you want to target kind of like a big guys to be your partners in China, most of them are prefer to take care of both platforms, and they will require to switch the account on iOS into their own. So my question is for Randy and Jinghua, do you agree with my perspective, or do you agree with Shirley's point of view?
Give them a microphone, please.
Just want to add, it's in terms of user acquisition and marketing branding, is more obvious from the to have both of channels and to take care of both of platforms. I mean, iOS and Android. Thank you.
Sure. I think I answered this a little bit in part, saying that the requirements are the same across both sides. But that is very, very, very true that most China publishers aren't interested in Android only. They resist that. They want both. There's a good business case for that as well. For most Western teams, the business case is that you will get the maximum marketing budget, or you can justify the maximum marketing budget if you can earn a return on your ad spend, your promotion spend on both platforms. If you separate those two platforms, you're going to kill your marketing budget on both sides. Why am I going to pay on iOS for marketing that's going to also benefit Android and vice versa? So the marketing budget on both sides gets cut, and overall you're not going to do as well. I will say that the one exception that I know of is when the Western team is really famous, like Plagendary, for example, and they say, well, why should we give up half or more when we know the featuring that we're going to get under our own brand is going to be much more than you, like who's AppicPlay or who's anybody here compared to them, for example. So, in that case, for us, we would consider Android only. But we build in certain circumstances to justify doing an Android-only deal. Android-only deals are kind of hard to sell in China. There are more games trying to go to China than capacity to publish.
Yeah.
Well, for our companies, we are actually open to different kinds of business models, and we can also be the exclusive Android publishers. For example, for two of our partners, Disney Crossy Road and Brawl Stars from Supercell, and you can easily understand why. And I agree that if you handle both platforms to one single publisher, that you can have the biggest marketing budget, and also you can have some branding. For example, like on-site promotions that you put on ads on TVs, on in metros, on bus, for example. But if you have two different publishers, or you keep half of the platforms like self-publishing, that it's kind of difficult for us to do that. And another suggestion I would have is, if you are not quite confident enough that when you try to launch the game globally, please don't take China on iOS. Because if you are not completely ready, but you also have some like live KPIs, some data from the kind of like soft launch game in China, then when you go to an Android publisher, that we have to look into those data and those KPIs. And if that's not satisfied enough, I think it would heavily impact your deal and your business terms. So if you are not completely ready, please don't do that.
And also, I think we forgot to mention, because in Android, you have to get approval. That's a regulation. It's harder to get approval your partner will say, we can try to get you through some backdoor, but it is subject to that approval.
It's
iOS
also
right
a,
now, right?
it's also a regulation for iOS.
Right, it's less.
No, it's the same. It's just Apple
Okay.
doesn't help enforce it. It's still a regulation.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for being active. Thank you for your questions. And yeah, thank you, the next speaker, for granting us this extra 10 minutes. It was really, really useful. Yeah, thank you. And I hope you
Thank you.
enjoy the last talk and then enjoy the award ceremony and the rest of your day. Bye-bye.